Welcome to Tangie's Tapestry, where spirituality, law, motherhood, and relationships weave into a rich and meaningful discussion. I'm your host, Tangie, a mother, daughter, sister, friend, and an avid entrepreneur. Join me as I share my personal journey, explore faith-based discussions, and offer valuable legal insights. Each episode is designed to inspire, empower, and connect with individuals on their unique path. So let's dive into today's topic and embark on this journey together. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Tangie's Tapestry, the podcast where we weave together stories of faith, personal growth, and legal wisdom. I'm your host, Tangie, and thank you for tuning in today. Let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. I did not post my episode last 2 weeks ago. Oh my god, you guys. The month of May, the beginning of May had just been so jam-packed with a bunch of stuff. You know, there was Mother's Day. My little one had a week-long camp with her school that I chaperoned. And so I had a lot of things going on with my business. It was just busy, right? So I neglected to post my podcast. I had it recorded and everything, but it was a lot. I didn't have time to get it, you know, put together and all that stuff like I normally do because I do all my stuff, y'all. I put together all my podcast episodes. I record them, I edit them, I create the content surrounding them. I do it all because I don't have a team as of yet, but I'm working on that. So yeah, but nevertheless, I'm here. I'm redoing episode 9, and so we're gonna be behind one episode. Okay, so whatever. I am a work in progress. Anyhow, episode 9 is about finding balance, nurturing your mental health. And I thought that this episode was fitting because this is the month of mental health awareness month in May. And so this is a episode that's really close to my heart. And I think it's a topic that gets overlooked because we are, in this day-to-day hustle where sometimes our mental health and self-care are not prioritized. So I just wanted to take a bit of a pause from, um, just some of my other topics that I've been talking about and focus on something that I think affects us all. And that is definitely our emotional and mental well being. And so, whether you're a parent, a professional, you're a student, or whatever the case may be, and you're just navigating life's roller coaster ride, I want to tell you that mental health does matter, and it is a topic that we should be talking about, not just in the month of May, but just in general throughout the year, because I think the times that we're living in definitely is taking a toll on some of our mental health. But I wanted to go ahead and share with you guys a scripture that I thought sets the tone for this conversation. And I'm going to grab my Bible here and I'm reading from the New Living Translation. And it's the scripture in Psalms 34, 17 through 18. And it reads, "The Lord hears his people when they call to him for help. He rescues them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those who are crushed in spirit." And I love this scripture because it reminds me that God not only sees us in our pain, but he draws near to us. And even when we feel broken, abandoned, rejected, unseen, if we feel overwhelmed, frustrated, whatever it is, the Lord is present with us. He's there for us in our times of trouble. And so today I wanted to talk about what it means to prioritize your mental health, especially in a world that often, glorifies us to be busy and that, um, we want to show everybody that we have it all put together and that that nothing bothers us and everything's perfect in our lives. There's this big, front on social media where people glorify all the great things that go on in their lives, but they never really share their struggles or the things that they're dealing with, and so, I think we are dealing with a lot of burnout and there's a lot of silence around our emotional struggles. And so, I just kind of wanted to talk about how we can, you know, find a balance and also, um, pay attention to our mental health. So let's begin with a little perspective. Mental Health Awareness Month is about, of course, education, healing, and also removing the stigma that surrounds mental health. Oftentimes, we don't want to talk about mental health or what that looks like. But let me just share with you a few statistics that I found that really stood out to me when I was just doing a little bit of research on like what's going on with what's going on in the mental health field. Um, so some of the things that I found are that, 1 in 5 adults in the United States experience mental health issues each year. 1 in 6 youth aged 6 through 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people, especially young people ages 10 to 34. That is so crazy to me. Like, just to think about, excuse me, a 10-year-old or a young child, feeling so hopeless that they feel that they have to commit suicide. I mean, I have an 11-year-old daughter, and I just can't even imagine um, losing a young child at that age to suicide because they don't feel like they have hope anymore. So that was, that one really stood out to me. And then about 43% of people with mental health issues received treatment this past year. That's really low. Like 43% of the people are getting mental health services. So those numbers are really significant. They're really heavy, and they're really real. And I share them not to, alarm you or to make you feel, like any type of way or whatever, but it reminds us that, there are people out there that are struggling, but you're not alone in this struggle. So I wanted to go into talking about about self-care and how self-care is really important. Um, and to me, self-care is not just about, taking a bubble bath or going to the spa. Because those are great ways to, have self-care. But I think if we're looking at it, also from a biblical perspective, I think you want to be intentional um, with it spiritually. And you also want to do the emotional work because I think that's what we often skip when we talk about self care. So, self care is about setting boundaries. It's saying, no to some things, not adding a bunch of things to your plate. You want to protect your peace. Um, it's resting without feeling guilty, especially some of us single moms. We feel obligated to do everything for everybody, whether we have young children, adult children. We are always wanting to take on so many different responsibilities. Um, and I think it's important for us to sometimes just rest and not feel guilty. Like even when I did not post my episode, 2 weeks ago, I felt bad about it. I kind of beat myself up a little bit. I was like, "Oh my god, I had been on a roll and I was doing this and I was doing that and I was doing so well, and then I just was like, I don't have the capacity to do it." And even when I got back from that camping trip, I felt bad because I was just so worn out that I was just resting that weekend. And I felt kind of bad, but I think it's important for us to, you know, definitely take a time of rest and not feel bad about it. I mean, even God rested, when he was creating everything in the beginning. He rested, and so I think that is important, that we get in that rest. It's also recognizing when we need help and asking for it. I know that for me is a huge one. I tend to take on a lot of responsibilities and I don't often ask for help because I don't want to burden people. I don't want to feel like I am interfering with other people's lives and the things that they have going on. So I don't always want to ask for help, but I have been doing really good on making sure that I have a team of people that I know I can count on if I do need help with something, and I reach out to those people um if I need help. So I think that's important. And then for me, self-care sometimes looks like getting quiet with God. I mentioned early that this, is also self-care also um, is a spiritual, can be spiritual for those of us who are believers. And for me, like I said, getting quiet with God when life feels really noisy. Um, so like again, there's the hustle and bustle of being busy and doing all of these things, but sometimes you just have to take that pause and then just, tune in to hear from God. Because, sometimes it's, us having to step away from our work and doing things for everybody. Um, and, taking a break from saying yes to everything, right? And just like getting close with God and just resting in his presence. Those things for me are really good self-care tips, or things that I do. In addition to, taking a walk and, being in nature, whatever it is, going on your spa days, all of those other things, going to a movie by yourself or whatever it is, right? But I think sometimes we miss out on that spiritual aspect, that emotional aspect, that rest, all of those things. And it also looks like, when you're dealing with self-care, to be honest about how you're doing, right? So whether it's mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, just taking a step back and just thinking to yourself, like, how am I? Doing a self check. Like, how am I doing? Like, am I okay? Am I good? Like, do I need to, take a day off of something? I even give Trinity, my daughter, I give her self-care days. I'll let her stay home, one day. Um, every so often, like out of the, a couple of months will go by, and I'll just be like, "How are you doing? Are you good? Do you need to take a mental day from school? Or even her extracurricular activities that she have. Do you need to just take a minute because sometimes even our children can get overwhelmed with a lot of stuff, with school and activities and all of these different things, and it's important for us. I mean, y'all heard me say the statistics of kids that are committing suicide they start at age 10. And so I think we also need to be checking in with our children and asking them, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How's your mental health? So it's not just about us adults checking in with ourselves, but we need to be checking in with our children as well. So let me get off that tangent. I also wanted to talk a little bit about my own personal journey with mental health and how mental health has, what the experiences that I've had with mental health and how it's impacted my life. Um, I think, throughout my life as an adult, up until becoming an adult, I have experienced mental health with my own self. Um, you know, I would say maybe more like situational, or seasonal highs and lows, like a depression, I would say. But one of the things that have shaken me to the core when it's dealing with mental health is my relationship with my mother. And I'm going to share something a little personal. Um, and many of you might already know this about, me and my mom, or what I went through with my mother. But back in 2019, I lost my mother to suicide. And that loss shook me to my core. And I think in the first time in my adult life, that was the one um, experience that I really did not know how to navigate, you know? Because, like I said, I've had experiences with mental health. I've gone through therapy, I've had counseling, I've had all of these things because I did have somewhat of a traumatic childhood growing up. And so I have, made sure that I tried to keep my mental health in check, to deal with those things. But in this instance, when losing my mother to suicide, I had to confront grief, confusion, anger. Like it was a whole wave of emotions that didn't make sense to me at that time. But it also forced me to look at how we in the Black community, and also in the church, often avoid talking about mental health. Like I haven't really had, I have not heard a lot of like churches or anything like do messages about how to cope with suicide or any of that kinds of stuff. Like it's just not that talked about. And I remember when my mother, when all that had happened, and then the officer that when they had found her body and all that stuff, I remember the officer giving me a number to go to get, like therapy. Like they had like this group session or whatever of people who had lost loved ones to suicide, and you could go and sit in on this group at this group session. And when I went to this group session, in that in that group, it was 2 Black people. It was myself and another guy, and the rest of everybody in there was not. They were white people, if I'm just putting it out there. Um, and so it just it and even some of the, like, suicide, like, events that I went to, was a lot of, like, it wasn't the Black people there, like, and I just was like, "Why do we not talk about suicide? Why is it such a taboo topic? Why is it such shunned a shunned topic? Like, nobody wants to talk about it." Um, and there's a lot of stigma behind it, and there's, even in, like, growing up in the church, I remember people telling me that, "When you commit suicide, you're going to hell," and all of these things, which I have not found a scripture that says that, right? And so, um, which that's a whole I would love to have a conversation with, like, spiritual leaders about suicide and just get to, like, the depth of, like, suicide in the biblical perspective of suicide, but that's a whole 'nother topic for another time. Um, but I just feel like we don't talk about it enough in the African American Black community, whatever you wanna call it. Um and we definitely don't talk about it enough in church, okay? And so my mother's, um, her death showed me just how layered mental health issues can be, and how important it is to seek help before like you have a crisis attack. Because my mother struggled with mental health throughout. I feel like from her childhood, I had um, gotten her journals and her diaries and stuff, and some of the things that I read, and I'm trying really hard not to get emotional, in this episode, but just some of the things that I read that my mother went through as a child, it was deep. And I can understand why she struggled and had so much pain in her life and why she felt that at, 54, 55, um, that it was time for her to leave, that it was time for her to exit this world because she couldn't deal with the pain anymore. And to have someone so close to me feel that hopeless and feel that unloved, which was not true. She was loved and and important to us, but for her, in her mind, that she didn't feel that, you know, it just it shook me to my core, man. It really did. And her death taught me to have compassion for people who struggle mentally, because I honestly can admit that from with my mother, I did not have a lot of compassion for her when I was a youth, because I was angry at some of the decisions and the choices that she made. She struggled with drugs and all of these things, which had an impact on my life, right? So I was angry with her a lot of times, and I did not understand the magnitude of the things that she went through until I read her journal, because my mother was not open with me. She never shared a lot of things that happened to her in her childhood, to where I could understand why she made the decisions and the choices that she made. And looking back at it, now it hurts that I wasn't understanding or compassionate for her, because I did not know, and I feel like if she were able to communicate and talk about those things with me, then maybe our relationship wouldn't have been so strained. Um, but again, you know, I now have compassion for people, because you never know what people are going through. You never know why they do the things that they do. You never know why they are lashing out or angry or depressed. You just don't know. When you see the homeless person on the street, you don't know their backstory. You don't know what they've gone through and what they've had to endure and why they're in that position. We just automatically just go to judge people and just think the worst of people without even taking the time to realize that people are dealing with real life issues. And so, like I said, my mother's death definitely taught me to have compassion for people and not to judge people um, when they are dealing with, you know, low seasons of their life, when they're dealing with mental health issues or whatever. And so it also taught me to check in, not just on myself, but with others. It taught me to make sure I'm reaching out to people that I love and care about, and just being like, "Hey, how are you doing? How are things going? Are you good?" Especially with my children. Like I said, I give my daughter a mental health day from school, maybe like once every couple months. Just because I want to make sure she's good, because kids out here are committing suicide. And we're not talking to our children. We're not checking in on them. We're not taking their feelings seriously. We're always trying to make it to seem like people, especially in the Black community, I can say we want to teach our children, especially our boys, that they need to be strong, that they don't need to be emotional, they don't need to have, they don't need to be crying, they don't need to be talking about their feelings and things like that. And it's it's just, I just wish we could do better, especially when it comes to mental health issues. I really do. And I think about my daughters, and I think to myself that they see me being strong, and I don't ever, a lot of times I don't ever really want them to be, I shouldn't say never ever, that doesn't make sense, but I don't want them to be seeing me crying all the time or emotional all the time. But I do tell them, like, it is okay to cry it out. It is okay to have a emotional, um like, just be at one with your emotions. It's okay to just not feel okay. Don't stay in that space. Now I do tell them, don't stay there. Don't fester in the don't let your emotions fester and get out of hand where then you're depressed and suicidal or anything like that. But definitely it is okay to cry. It is okay to not be okay. And I think sometimes we try to teach our daughters to be strong, to be like a go-getter. Don't let nothing, like, I don't know, don't let anything break you or whatever. And that's just not, we're human. We're going to have bad days. We're going to, get upset or whatever, but we just can't stay in those emotions. And so, um, yeah, so like I said, I kind of go off a little bit on these tangents, but um again, like I was saying, my mother's death taught me to check in with others and also checking on myself. And then it taught me that mental wellness is a priority and it's not a luxury. And what does that even mean? That basically is just saying that, we have to prioritize our mental health. It's not something that should be taken lightly. Um, and it shouldn't be something that um, we just kind of put to the back burner. So, it's important that we prioritize our mental health and not look at it, like I said, as a luxury. Um, so that means, we're caring for our emotional and psychological well being. Um, and it isn't something that's optional or reserved for when we have like extra time to do it, or we have some money or the energy to, invest in our mental wellness, right? It's something that to me deserves regular intentional attention, just like our physical health or our relationships or our career. We're so quick to be able to put those at the forefront of our lives. We go to the gym and we exercise, and we want to make sure we look good. Some people pay for, themselves to look well and get their hair and nails and everything done, right? And maybe that's some kind of form of, mental wellness for them or whatever. But when you take all that away, what do you have? You just have yourself, right? And so it's important that you prioritize your mental wellness, and not just do it whenever you feel like you have time, or you're waiting till the last minute when you're like in despair, and then you're like, oh, let me check on my well-being. So that's kind of what I meant when I said, you know, about your prioritizing your mental health. So I know that um, that was a lot, that I talked about, but I wanted to share a few more things. And I will say this, my mother's death taught me to know that when I'm not okay, to get help and to seek help, um, and to go also to God, you know, in those times of despair and hope. And I will say my mother was a God fearing woman. She loved the Lord. She taught me about God and everything. So sometimes I do toil with the fact that she felt the way she felt, and she I, I don't know what her conversation may have been, um in her last moments. I don't know if she talked to God. I don't know any of that, but I do know she loved the Lord. And, sometimes God just allows things to happen. There's some people who try, that attempt suicide and it fails, and God allows them more time, while there's others like my mother who God just allows for them to wave that white flag and just be done. And so I have found peace with it. It does hurt. It does hurt, but I have found peace. I have found peace with my mom's passing. So I wanted to leave you guys with a few practical self-care tips that I've used to support my own mental health, my mental wellness, especially during, difficult seasons. I think we're living in some crazy times. Things are a lot uh hectic than they have been. And I guess as the world goes on, things will probably get worse. I mean, it's in the Bible. So but I think these practical tips might, just give you a little bit of help with dealing with your mental wellness. And I think one of them is to start your day with intention. So, even like 5 minutes of prayer, silence, or even journaling can help you feel centered. So start your day off doing that. Um, Limit the things that drain you. So that might be getting rid of toxic people in your life, or toxic conversations that you might have with people or things. Limiting your social media scrolling. I know that is one of my biggest issues I have today. Is scrolling on social media. Like, oh my god, you'll be surprised at how many hours you waste in a day just scrolling on that thing, scrolling on your phone, looking at a whole bunch of stuff that's just not good for your mental health. Or just overextending yourself also, doing a bunch of things for people when you really should just be saying, no, I can't add anything else to my plate. Um, and I think that's where those boundaries come in because that's a form of love, self-care, all of the above, right? So, another tip is to move your body. It doesn't have to be a full workout. You could go walk, take a walk around your neighborhood. If you're living in Arizona, that's where I'm from. You might not want to be walking around the neighborhood in the summertime, but you know, um, if you wake up super early in the morning, you might be able to get in a nice little walk before that sun hits. Out here in Maryland, it's beautiful. So, the weather is nice to take a walk out around the neighborhood or even just a walk in nature or whatever. Stretching your body, dancing to your favorite song. I need to get in some of my TikToks, yeah, before they ban TikTok again or something. I need to do some. I was posting videos every so often. I haven't really done like my little mommy daughter dances with Trinity. But those are, things that will uplift your mood. Um, Another tip is to speak kindly of yourself. So give yourself some affirmations, replace, negative self-talk with positive affirmations that are rooted in truth. Now, we don't want to be over here giving affirmations that um aren't realistic or whatever, but just like, just some positive, uplifting affirmations. Like, I'm more than a conqueror. I can do all things through Christ. I am going to have a great day today, no matter what happens. I am bold, beautiful, strong, resilient, like whatever, just talk good about yourself, even when you make a mistake or whatever. Um, because you are worthy, you are capable, and you are, not alone in this struggle of um, just trying to be the best version of yourself, right? So, and the last one that I want to say is ask for help. Listen, like I told y'all earlier on, that's been one of my, hurdles in life is getting help from people because one, I don't want people treating me like a charity case. I've had people in my life who have thought that helping me meant doing all these things for me and because I'm not capable of doing them for myself and then making me feel like I'm some type of charity case and I need this and I need that and I'm not capable of doing things on my own, or I don't have the financial resources to do things or whatever. I don't want that kind of help. Okay. But the help that I'm talking about getting is like therapy, support groups, trusted friends and family who are a part of the kingdom of God, right? Don't your spiritual friends and family, those people that can pray for you, that can come over and sit with you and talk with you and offer love and support. That kind of help. Um, and don't let pride or fear isolate you, because I have been known to do that. I have allowed pride to be like, no, I'm not asking for help because I got this, or I'm afraid to ask for help because I don't want to feel like I don't want people to look down on me or think, I don't know. Like I've had those issues, but thank God today I am so much better than what I used to be. And I will ask my trusted people, okay, my trusted tribe for help when I need it. I know who I can go to when I need a good prayer partner or whatever. I have my handful of people that I can trust. And so um you know these things that I've expressed, about starting your day with intention, limiting what drains you, moving your body, speaking kindly of yourself, asking for help. These things aren't just about feeling better, but they are about making sure that you're living a life of wholeness, and that you're just making sure that you're in tune with the well-being of your mental health. And so I know this was a fully loaded conversation. Definitely went over longer than what I anticipated, but I think it is something that definitely needs more attention. Um, and I think today's conversation is just a reminder that, you know, we are all human, and that we don't all have it together. Anytime I see somebody that's on social media posting about all of the glitz and glam and how they, you know, have had hard times, but everything is great in their lives, and they don't give you the backstory of how they got to that point of how they feel good, but they only just tell you all the good. They never tell you about the struggle. Those people I kind of don't listen to. I don't follow them. I don't want to hear about all the great things that's going on in your life and how you've never had any struggles. Or if you did have struggles, you don't share them. You're just telling us all about how you've arrived to be successful and great and happy and everything's great and blessed and you're highly favored. Those kind of people, I just be like, I think you've had some problems too, because we all have. None of us have get through this life without any kind of struggle. And so, um, I think even in this topic, it's a reminder that we don't have to do everything either. We don't have to do all of the stuff that we try to put on our plates to do. It's okay to rest. It's okay to take time to heal. It's okay to make sure you find support and peace in your life. Like, it's okay to do those things. We all deserve to have those things in our lives. And so we don't have to do everything. We do not have to be busybodies, and we don't have to always be doing this and doing that. And so yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. So make sure um, you just soak this all in, because like I said, it was fully loaded. But if this episode touched you, I do invite you to share it with someone who may be silently struggling. Oftentimes see on my social media a lot of people posting about their they post things on social media that lets me know they have some mental health issues going on. And instead of, posting on social media about all the things that you got going on, I really do hope and pray that people can find a support system outside of social media, um, to heal and to get their mental health in order. And let's normalize these conversations. I'd love to have like spiritual leaders, some maybe pastors or ministers or therapists or counselors or whatever, have a conversation about mental health, um, and how we can normalize this conversation. Um, and then I think we also, within our community should be like a safe space for each other. Um, so yeah, that's all I got for y'all today. Um, I do hope that this conversation provided some type of, you know, perspective on making sure that you get your mental health in that you just, take inventory of your mental health and see how you are today, you know. But that's all I got for y'all. Don't forget to subscribe to Tangi's Tapestry. Um, Even leave a review if you want to, or comment. Um, if you've been enjoying these episodes. And most of all, I just want to say take care of yourself because you all matter. Have a blessed week, you guys. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Tangi's Tapestry. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Remember, new episodes drop every second and fourth Monday, so be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more heartfelt discussions, personal stories, and valuable legal insight. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with your family, friends, and followers. Your support means the world to me as I strive to create meaningful content that inspires and empowers. Well, until next time, take care and remember to weave your own unique story into the tapestry of life. See you on the next episode of Tangi's Tapestry.